Welcome to the Sons of Mjolnir podcast.
The Sons of... what?
This isn't your Sons of Macaroni, yeah!
The Sons of Mjolnir?
This is Sons of Mjolnir, yeah!
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Sons of Mjolnir. As always, I am one of your hosts, Fat Thor, and we are back for another episode of Beyond Invincible, the Invincible After Show. And as always, I am joined by my beautiful and handsome co-host, Sean from Metalcore Nerd. Sean, how are you doing today?
Great, man. You're too kind.
Hey, man, I'm just so grateful to be talking to you, and I'm so excited to be doing this. As always, it's always so much fun. But before we get started, I just want to take a quick moment today to shout out someone in the community. Over the past couple of weeks, we unfortunately lost a member of the comic community and a friend to many, Jesse Tapia. I hope I'm saying the name correctly. But unfortunately, he passed away. So I just wanted to take a moment to give my condolences, send my love to all of his friends and family. While I may not have known Jesse personally, he was one of us. He was part of our community, and his love and kindness will never be forgotten. So I just want to dedicate this episode to him. And then also the GoFundMe for his funeral services will be underneath in the description. So if you are able, please go and donate to them. He was a great guy. So again, sending all my love to Jesse and his family. Sean, let's get into this episode of Invincible. So we are talking about episode 3, and man, this is a doozy of an episode. This one was crazy. And so before we get started into all the nitty-gritty stuff of the episode, Sean, what are your overall thoughts of episode 3 and how it compares to the first 2 episodes?
This is a big one. Definitely my favorite of the 3 so far. And I loved episode 1 and episode 2, but this one just kind of, it takes you in such a direction that is very unexpected. And we've kind of talked about this in the first 2 episodes. There's a lot going on in this season and a lot of kind of, like bricks being laid to set up a bunch of different kind of storylines and everything. But this one takes a turn in a very big way, especially with all the stuff with the Viltrumites. And it's just wild. And we get a ton of Alan, which is great.
Dude, I love Alan. To just full exposure, like I'm a big Seth Rogen fan. So like I love Seth Rogen just in himself. So I feel like that could be part of why I love Alan so much. But Alan in the comic is just as great. And I think he's just such a fun character. And I'm so glad that we got to spend pretty much half this episode just with Alan, which we were just talking about this. A turn that I was not really expecting. Like obviously in the comic, this is an entire issue. This is issue 23. And so, like I said, I was not expecting them to kind of fit that in the middle of an episode, but the way they did it just works so well. And even if you read how the comic is laid out, it also makes sense, like why they did it that way. The title card that we get is actually the name of the issue. What is it? Something machine something.
Oh, I don't know. I just remember the Alan the Alien title card.
There's a name, like
there's a name under it. Yeah,
has a name. Like I said, I forget what it is. People in the comments can let us know. But Sean, that makes me think of something that I want to talk about just before we get to the Alan stuff, because again, that's kind of a major portion of this episode. But we start off this episode with Mark coming to college, and Debbie drops him off, and then him and Amber get a little, get a little busy. And so the reason I bring this up, and I wanted to highlight this, and this has been a theme throughout the show, but I just wanted to highlight it in this episode, is Amber. I love Amber in this show, and the changes that they made to Amber for the show. Because in the book, which another big difference in the book is at this moment, like when they're in college at first, she doesn't know that he's invincible. Like that's still not she doesn't know right away. But it's like, I don't know, she's just very much and we see later in this episode, like when Mark leaves, like Amber's like, yeah, dude, go do it. Like Amber in the books is very much more kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not damsel in distress, but just kind of doesn't really know what's going on. And
aloof.
Aloof, doesn't know what's going on, and is kind of more I don't like not understanding of Mark's superhero stuff, and I
Right.
just love how Amber in the show is much more like, yeah, go do what you gotta do. Like, you get what I'm saying? Much more like in
For sure.
charge, if you will. Like she doesn't depend on Mark as much as like her
Yes.
comic book counter Mark. But yeah, so like I said, that's like not really has anything to do with like him and Amber getting busy. Like I said, that pretty much plays out the same way in the comic book. But I just, like I said, love the differences of the Amber character.
I even noticed that when, like I mentioned before, I read the first 3 volumes, which pretty much cover season 1 of
Mm-hmm.
Invincible, and even reading that, you notice how much of a difference they've made Amber from the show, which I like because it just kind of gives more perspective and respect on a female character that, like, obviously she would know what the fuck is going on and would be able
Yeah.
to piece it out rather than being, some like totally unaware character
Mm-hmm.
who just doesn't put the pieces together. She's kind of like a in the show at least, she's kind of like, Mark's Mary Jane, in a way,
Yeah. 100%, like fully supportive, like fully understanding, which again, I don't want to sound like I'm talking bad about the comic book counterpart of Amber. Like she's
Right.
not necessarily not supportive and stuff. I think they did it a lot better in the show, like portraying her
For sure.
character. But it also brings up, which this is not a spoiler for the show, which this is more spoiler for the comic book side, but later on this all comes into play with Adam Eve. And
Makes total
so
sense.
in exactly, like it makes sense, but in the book a major part of that is like her not Amber not understanding like being a superhero, and like
Mhm.
so like Mark leaving all the time and like not being around, like that's a major part of that kind of triangle. So I'm interested to see how they're going to deal with that in the show, since Amber is, like I said, a lot more in the show, like understanding and kind of in charge, not as dependent on Mark. So I'm interested how that's going to play out, like that dynamic later on in the show.
Right. I mean, I can see it kind of playing out similarly because you can still have those feelings
Hmm.
regardless if you're supportive. It doesn't mean her feelings
Yeah,
can't change. You
true.
know, once you go to space for a few weeks,
Yeah,
like
which in this
time and time
episode,
again,
yeah. What do they say? It takes them 6 days to get there, 6 Earth
just
days.
yeah. He said like 6 Earth days just to get there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So who knows how long he's going to be there. So yeah, like I said, I'm interested to see. I think you're right though. Like they can use the same dynamic, but like I said, I'm just interested to see how that's going to play out later with the differences to Amber's character.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
let's
I am
get
too.
in. Oh, go ahead. So what'd
No,
you
I
say?
am too. I'm very interested to see how they get there because I mean, I think anyone knows who like just is into like pop culture comic stuff. You
Hmm.
know, Mark and Adam Eve get together. Like,
Yeah, I mean that's like you
I know
said.
they're one of the most like least toxic comic book couples like of all time. Like I know they're
Hmm.
touted as like one of the most healthy, like actually perfect for each other comic book couples are two superheroes. That's not usually a thing, obviously, as
Yeah.
we've seen in multiple forms of media.
Hmm.
So I'm excited to get there once we get there. I have a feeling it's going to be a bit, but
Yeah. And
I
that
like long.
also reminds me though too, so like in the books, Mark and Amber go and visit Eve at her house in Africa, where we saw them in last episode, where they're having like the graduation party. And it
Yeah.
feels like, which I mean, maybe this will happen, but so like in the books, that's the first time that they go there. So in the show, we see that it's not just Mark and Amber there, like William's there, like they're all having a party there. So that's another going back to the whole like love triangle of it all. It makes me curious how they're going to deal with it in the show, because it seems like that scene from the book, you know what I mean, but like changed. So again, we didn't see a major part of that issue is, like I said, like Adam Eve and Mark have a conversation on the roof all about Amber and like how she doesn't get it and all this stuff. And so like, well,
Right.
again, we didn't see that happen, so it makes me curious, like maybe they're kind of changing things around. I don't know. Like I said, I think that's interesting and just something I was thinking about while we were getting ready for this episode.
Yeah. I'm like I said, I'm excited to see where it goes, see how
Yeah.
they deal with that.
Exactly. But let's get into, like I said, there's a couple major moments in this episode. I would say two major moments. So let's get into the first one. And that's going to be, like we were talking about, this kind of side quest with Alan. And we get basically Alan's whole origin story of, why he exists. And basically, I mean, if you guys are watching this, you should have watched the episode because we're talking about spoilers. But just a quick recap for maybe those who forget, his people are dying off, like they are on the brink of extinction, so they start reproducing in these test tubes to try and fight against the Viltrumite empire, and the only successful one is Alan, and basically he gets his ass kicked by Viltrumites. And so then his job becomes to search the galaxy for other people that maybe could defeat a Viltrumite. And so that's Alan's backstory. And then we pick up with him after he leaves Earth, which he wasn't even supposed to be there in the first place. But
Yep.
Sean, we already kind of talked about it a little bit, but what did you think of, like I said, learning Alan's origin story and then seeing him in the Coalition of the Planets?
It was super interesting to see like why he was created, and I love how they painted it as like such a triumph, even though it technically was a failure. I liked that kind of narrative around it, and how Alan is still like confident about his place like in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That's like a nice attitude, even though he kind of didn't fulfill the needs he was supposed to per se. I will say it's interesting that the Viltrumites left him alive, because that's
Yes.
usually not really their MO, like
Mm-hmm.
ever. With
Yeah.
anything, you know what I
I don't
mean?
think it was purposeful. I mean, dude had his guts straight out, like eyeball out. I thought he was dead.
Oh,
I've
no,
read
I
the
meant the
book and I thought he was dead. I was like, damn, they killed him in the show.
oh, no, I meant the first time. Like, when they are like, "Oh, he wasn't strong enough to fight
When the
the
flashback.
Viltrumites." Yeah,
Yeah, true. Which that is
yeah.
a good point that they left him alive. Yeah, I guess that's a little spoiler for where we're going in this discussion, though.
Yeah, which is fine. Again, this is an after show. People
Yeah,
people know
exactly.
people know what's coming. But yeah, I was kinda like, "Huh, they left him alive
Hmm.
even back then. That's weird." Unless we've seen kind of how arrogant they are
That's what
with
I'm thinking.
Bill Price with good reason. That's kinda what I chalked it up to
Hmm.
as well. Because even when, Langstrom in that alternate universe where Omni-Man and Mark are together, he, like, teleports somewhere and they're like, "Ah, whatever, don't care." You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, probably should be a loose end you should probably follow up on, but they're like so confident and cocky. They're just like, nah, whatever. Who
Yeah,
cares?
I think that's really what the case was. Like you said, they were just like, yeah, dude is literally an ant to us. I mean, he thought, he referenced Debbie as a pet, like, so they
Right.
don't think of others as anywhere equal to them. Even people in their own species, they don't think, like, that's the Viltrumites' whole thing is
Yeah.
they literally fight each other until the strongest is left, and like those are the people that survive on Viltrum, I think, is the
Yeah.
home planet. So
It's like a Planet of the Apes kind of scenario. It's kind of
dude, yeah, it's crazy, which we're gonna get more into. I want to talk about really quickly though. So I really loved the inclusion of the Coalition of the Planets and Thaddeus,
Thetis.
Thetis, yeah, Thetis. Thank you. Which I gotta look up. I should have done this before we started recording, but the voice actor for Thetis, I know that voice, and dude killed it, like straight booming.
Oh yeah, his voice is, and they used a lot of his voice in some of the trailers too,
Yeah,
which
I
he has
noticed that.
such a prominent like commanding voice.
Yeah, which he's gonna be a big
Ah,
player moving
I knew
forward.
it.
Who is it?
The guy who does Optimus Prime. I was like, that
Of
has to be the guy that
course.
does Optimus Prime.
Yeah, for
And it
sure.
is.
Yep, of course. Makes total. That's why I was like, I know that voice. I
You're
know
like,
I've
oh yeah,
heard that voice.
you know it.
But yeah, which again, going to the changes from comic to screen, it plays out a little differently in the show. And so again, you guys watch the episode, so you know where we're going. But in the book, it's after Alan gets all messed up. He like comes to his bedside and is like, there, like, he's like, I know you can hear me, like, you can't move, like, we've reattached your eye, blah 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 blah. and he basically is like, there's a mole in the coalition of the planets, but they never have the conversation face to face. And then
Huh.
when Alan, and which also, by the way, one of the best names in Invincible, General Talia, that's his girlfriend's name. But that the secret that he's telling her in, like, when they're in the, what's it called, the diner, right? When they're in the diner, so like they don't have that conversation about the mole,
Huh.
or like that there's a mole in there. So again,
Interesting.
very small change, but I just thought it was interesting how they kind of switch that around, which I think is very important to the ending of, not the ending of the episode, but the ending of the Alan episode, where
Right.
we see Thetis is a little, he might be a little shifty, if you say
Might
he,
be.
yeah, I say definitely is a little shifty. So I want to get
He's the
your,
mole, man.
yeah, I was gonna say, I want to get your thoughts on that. So what do you think about the whole idea of a mole being in the coalition of planets? And so you're saying you think he is the mole, like, for sure
I think
then?
he's a Viltrumite.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they sent him to like be this like leader of the coalition, or at least be in it. And now he's kind of the head guy. Everyone thinks he's legit. My
Hmm.
biggest question now, you're making me think, because I was like, oh, Alan's definitely dead because he turns
Hmm.
off the machine or whatever, and I was like, he's dead. But what you're saying makes me think maybe he's not dead.
Well, I don't know. It's, again, it's like, I don't want to spoil too much for
I know.
people, right? It's like, again, this is the after show, and like
Yeah,
our job here, like we talk about, it's like breakdown slash discussion, but it's like, I don't want to
yeah,
break down too much because I still want
right.
there to be some fun surprises for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So
Eh,
I'm just gonna leave it at that, and I just want to
Okay.
say, like I said, I more so wanted to talk about just the idea of Viltrumites are infiltrating the coalition of planets, and like that, the whole point of them is to stop the Viltrumite empire.
Right.
So the implications of that, and like you said, I'm with the changes of this, I'm super excited to see what they're doing with Thetis, and then, like you said, Alan, because again, we've talked about this before. While they follow the book very closely, there still are changes. So that could be a change, one of the changes that they make, and it could play out way differently than the books.
And the fact that you even mentioned that Alan and his girlfriend have that conversation about him talking about the mole and how
Mhm.
he's supposed to find it, and then if she goes back and sees Alan's, the crazy space
Mhm.
machine he's in, keeping him alive or whatever, and she see that that's off, you can kind of put two and two together there,
And
or at least some suspicion.
she saw Thetis come into the room, so she would know that it was him. Like you said, she
Right.
was there when the machines were working, so she could. Oh, we talked about a mole. I saw him last. His machine.
He,
So
he
the
even
pieces.
he even said, "Yeah, go get some rest." Like he's the
Yes.
reason she left.
Exactly. So yeah, I think that the show could be planned to give her a kind of bigger role in all this, which I think would be super
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, the conversation in the book, the conversation they have, which I just thought was, again, kind of just an interesting change. So again, so the whole reason we cut to this whole Alan side quest is, like I said, it's because Mark and uh oh, I'm forgetting her name again. I'm doing Amber. Mark and Amber are getting busy, and
Yeah.
so that's why we cut to this. But then, but then Alan and General Talia start getting busy themselves, which, I, again, small change. But so in the books, Alan is like not game for it at all. Like, not in
Oh
a
wow.
weird, not in a weird, like, she pressures him kind of way, but like, so like we talked about in Alan's origin story, he's the last, one of the last of his people. Like, his people were on the brink of extinction, which is why they started, creating, Allens or whatever. But so in his culture, they like can't reproduce sexually, and like can't like be with other beings sexually, because it's like a threat to their
Huh.
gene pool or whatever. Like, they have to ensure, that the offspring will survive and stuff, so that, their numbers can come back up.
Interesting.
But I mean, she's like, your numbers it's like just like a dogma thing, and like in his culture, like that, like she's like, your people are fine now, like there's plenty of you, you know. So that,
Right.
and like, so that's the conversation that they're having in the diner in the book. He's like telling her like, oh, like keep it down, and she's like, what do you think, someone's gonna hear us and they're gonna come, because he's like, if people find out that I'm gonna lose my title, like it's like it is kind of a big deal, like if
Huh.
people
Interesting.
found out that he did, like, you know, do the dirty, he could like lose his title as the whatever, I forget what they call it, ambassador or whatever. So
Yeah.
again, I just thought it's interesting how they kind of replace that with this whole mole narrative, and it seems like they did that for a specific reason.
Right. Yeah. That's an interesting change for
Yeah.
sure.
But we got to talk about, we already talked about it a little bit, but I mean, just talk about how freaking nuts it was. So the Viltrumites come in and just completely wreck
Decimate.
Alan, decimate Alan. And so something else I find very interesting, which, but there's a small change here with the Viltrumites that show up. And
Okay.
again, kind of interesting. So here we have Thula, who, that's the lady with the, like
Knife braid.
the knife braid, right? And in the book, Thula's not involved in this little trio. We get in the show are Thula, Lucan, and then there's one other one, just you know, average mustached Viltrumite, which is very common in their
Stock
culture.
Viltrumite.
Yes, literally stock Viltrumite. But again, in the book, it's Thula's not involved in this. So I thought it was interesting. Again, like I feel like they're making these kind of specific changes for specific reasons, and I find that very interesting.
Right.
But they again, they show up and just completely wreck Alan, and it's pretty much exactly the same how it is in the book, but it's just like even crazier to see in live action. They're just literally beating the shit out of him. And so, what did you think of this, Sean? Coming in, you didn't know this was going to
Brutal.
happen, right? So
Oh,
how
I was shocked. As soon as the
shocked?
Viltrumite showed up, I was like, fuck.
Yeah. Did you think he was
Damn.
going to put up a fight? Like like I said, I was, even knowing it was happening, I was shocked.
I think it was also, like he has that knowledge of the mole too. So he's like, I know someone set me up. You know what I
True.
mean? So that's a big thing where he's just like, I'm not going to give up any information.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather just go out than try, because he knows he's not going to beat him.
Yeah.
He's tried before, obviously.
And
He's not
especially
going to take on
three of them.
three of them. Like,
Yeah, maybe
definitely,
one of them, like he could
yeah,
fight him off, but three of them, nah.
definitely not. And one of the most heartbreaking scenes is when he gets punched and his eye gets knocked out, and then his eye is
Ooh.
like facing his girlfriend.
Ooh, I
Ugh,
didn't even notice that. That's good, Sean. That's good.
brutal, man. I'm like,
Ooh.
he's like looking at her while he's getting torn to pieces. Literally,
Oof.
gets his arm chopped off, his
Mhm.
guts spilled all over space. It's brutal, man.
I love the part when they're questioning him and he's like, I don't know, all you biclop people look the same to me. Like, meaning people with two eyes. I thought that
Yeah,
was so funny.
yeah,
He
it was
went
good.
out like a stud, man. Like,
He
went out
did.
swinging. I mean, not necessarily swinging, but
Mentally sick.
yeah, mentally was swinging. But yeah, like I said, I love I love and hate that part, because it's just so cool to
Right.
see, and it's like so surprising, and like for everyone at home watching it, I think it's gonna, if they don't know, if they haven't read the comics, it's gonna take them by such a surprise. So I'm super excited. I
Yeah,
know the memes are coming. The memes and the gifs of
for
Alan
sure.
getting his ass kicked are gonna be flying high, and I can't wait for it.
It's probably the second biggest surprise for anyone who knows nothing about Invincible, as probably the first episode of the season when
Yeah.
Omni-Man just kills the Guardians of the Globe. Because you know what I mean? Like the feeling of the
Mhm.
first episode is such like almost like a Saturday morning cartoon. Like if you're watching like Spider-Man, the animated series or something, that's like the vibe it gives off. You know what I mean? Until the end, and you're like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
This took a turn, like
Mhm.
the most wild turn ever. And even this one kind of starts off kind of fun in a way, you know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
it's like,
Oh, the Alan
Alan's
episode
back.
is super fun until we get there. Like
Yeah,
I don't know what song is playing, which that's another thing I want to shout out about the season as a whole. The soundtrack is great. They've been
Yeah.
hitting it out of the park with. So you're the music guy here, so you'll probably even know the song I'm talking about. But whatever song's playing when Alan's flying through the city, like he's smiling. It's a fun ass episode, and then they just whoop throw the rug out from under us.
Yeah,
And
dude.
like you said, I think that's a great shot. I would definitely compare it to when Omni-Man wrecked the Guardians of the Globe. I think it's just as shocking and impactful for sure.
Yeah, you're just like, "Oh, no, Alan." 'Cause I think
Literally.
it's such a trick for people because people will be so stoked that, like, "Oh, Alan's back, hell yeah." And then you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, Alan's back."
No. Yeah. Oh, Alan's was back.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
and like you said, that was me because I love the character Alan. I love Seth Rogen, so I'm like, yeah, Alan, let's go. But then once I saw him pull up to the coalition of planets, I'm like, no. But
Yeah,
so I mean, I think we kind of covered Alan. I'm trying to
right.
think if there's anything else in the Alan episode.
Oh, the one thing I wanna bring up, it has nothing to do story-wise, but when he's at
Mhm.
the diner, the weird alien food they're eating is hilarious. Like, he's
Oh
eating, like,
yes,
almost like little
and
crawly guys,
her
and then
food is eating his
he's
food.
eating his food. I was like, "Damn, what weird ass creative alien food."
Which is so funny too, because so like that's the same in the book too. Like they have pretty much same conversation, word for word, where he says like, "Oh, like when I'm gone, like this is the thing I miss most, like whatever it is."
Right.
But it like the things are just on the table, and then you see them kind of fly in the next panel. So it like you don't see her food like eating his food, and like I
Oh, okay,
love how
okay.
they added that visual gag in for the show because again it's the same like
Funny.
we see that creepy brain thing like I said just in one panel very quickly, but
Right.
to actually see that it's not like just a thing, it's alive too. I thought that was super cool, like super funny.
Yeah. It's just like a cool thing that like obviously things like this have the liberty to do and
Mhm.
just like make things that are like wild even in comic form even more wild
Yeah,
animated, it's
exactly,
cool.
like you said, even animation standards it's like that's just wild.
Yeah. It's like super like Rick and Morty level
I love
stuff.
I love me some good weird shit too.
Yeah.
Like you said, like kind of Rick and Morty style, like just like yeah, aliens eat weird shit. Like they probably think what we eat's weird, right? So
Right.
I always love stuff like that. But
Right. Yeah.
let's
I've
oh
been
go ahead.
noticing like little details like when I like rewatch a second time. I'm like, oh, that little food ate the other food. Weird.
Yeah. But
Okay.
let's get into the other part of the episode because so this other part is going to be our second major, I guess you could say, what the fuck moment of the episode, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
after all this Alan shenanigans, we meet up back with Mark and we get, hold on, downloading everything that happened in the episode. But we meet up back with Mark, and he basically runs into Seance Dog, and Seance Dog is the in-universe superhero that Mark's like obsessed with, which is a play on Doctor Strange.
Exchange as a
Yeah,
dog.
exactly. Doctor. That's all you need to know. Doctor Strange as a dog is what he is.
Literally.
But a super again just another testament to how fun this show is, like the fact that they added the character and they did that play on Doctor Strange. So in the book it's actually Science Dog, it's not Seance Dog. They did
Oh,
that for the
Sand Dog is
show.
way funnier.
Yeah, Seance Dog is so much funnier, so I'm so glad that they played it out that way. But basically he beats the shit out of Seance Dog, and we learn that he's not actually Seance Dog. He is a bug alien. I forget what the his name is, but
I think the planet is like Thraxan or
yeah,
something.
Thraxia. He comes from the planet
Thraxan.
Thraxia, and he comes basically to recruit Mark and saying that his planet is in trouble and that 42 billion people are going to die, yada
Right.
yada yada. And so Mark goes with him to save this planet of bug people, and he gets
I guess the
there.
biggest thing too is that
Mhm.
William's kind of one of the reasons like that coaxed him to do it. Being like,
Yes,
"Oh, the one time you didn't try something, something bad happened." Being
very
like, "You need
true.
help." Yeah, yeah.
Very true. And I think that's kind of a call to, at least in the comic form. I'm trying to remember. I don't think William is very no, William. So in the book, Science Dog, not Seance Dog, comes to Mark when he's at Debbie's house. So this doesn't even happen at the college.
Oh,
So William's
weird.
not even there. But
Interesting.
during this time in the book, we are still dealing with the stuff with Rick and what do they call those robot people? Remember, so in the first season they go on the college trip and the mad scientist guy makes like the killer
Yes.
robot people and it's their
Yep.
William's boyfriend Rick is turns into a robot
Yes.
guy.
Yes.
That's all going on while once they go to college in the book.
Oh,
So,
okay,
and one
okay.
of the so and again another change from the book. So William is straight in the book, and like Rick is just one of their friends, like a mutual friend of Mark and William. And basically, William gets on Mark's ass and like is upset with Mark because Rick goes missing and he's just like missing for like a couple weeks or a month or whatever and Mark is just off doing superhero shit. And so William gets mad at him and he's like, dude, Rick is our friend, you have these powers, like we have, like you haven't even tried to go look for him. And so then they go look for Rick and then that leads to the all the stuff we saw in season 1 where he catches the mad
Okay.
scientist guy. So I think the change in the show was that William encounters Mark and the Thraxian, and like you said, he
Okay.
convinces him using the kind of same thing, the kind of guilt thing of like, oh, like you have to go save
For
these
sure.
people, and in place of the Rick stuff, since we already have gotten to that.
There was a nice callback to Rick too,
Mm-hmm.
because why he goes to Amber's is because he thought William the sock was on the door, so he thought
Yeah.
William was also getting down,
Yeah. Exactly.
and he's like, oh, I'm still messed up over Rick, and that was like a nice line, kind of like we talked about last week with the Martian kind of being like a nice tie from, and it's just
Yeah.
one line, but it's a good line to make sure that even these like side adventures have meaning towards the overall story. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's nice. It's good writing, you know what I mean, to keep
Yeah.
everything nice and everything affects everything,
Oh,
obviously.
1,000%. And I think that's something that both the comic book Invincible does super well is they play with all these kind of threads up in the air and it all kind of comes, like I said, the structure is so different, but
Right.
like the stuff with Robot and like Robot, getting himself a body and like you said, the stuff with Rick and the other machine, I forget their name, but I'm just gonna call them machine men, the machine men,
Yeah,
and
I can't remember their name either.
the
Yeah.
things with the Martians and the Sequids, like all these things
Yeah.
are kind of like up in the air, but they all circle back around and like they all become important. I think the comic does that super well, and the show is doing that really, really well. And I think it also goes back to one of our main points from the other two episodes is much of this season is about, like we talked about, the consequences from season 1 and like the
Sure.
consequences of all of our characters' actions from the first season. And I think this is another great example of that. And like you're saying, it's not just the main storyline of Omni-Man. Like, yes, we are dealing with those consequences, but we're also dealing of the consequences from all these other storylines. Like we talked about the
Sure.
Martians and the stuff with Rick and the Machine Men and all that. So again, I think just a really great example of we are this season is very much just responding to the events of season 1.
Right. Yeah. 100%. Everything is definitely placated on that.
Mhm. Yeah. But then so Mark goes with the Thraxian, which again I can't remember his name, but they end up at planet Thraxa, whatever however you say it. And again, the another what the fuck moment of the episode, Omni-Man is the leader of this planet. He's like the overlord, whatever they call it.
Yeah.
And that's where the episode leaves us with that. He's like, "Hello, son," or whatever, with his hand
It's
held
been a
out.
while. Yeah.
Yeah, and then episode end, like massive cliffhanger for next week. So, Sean, let me get your thoughts on again being the fresh viewer here. What was your thoughts when you saw? Were you expecting that at all? Were you like even thinking that in your head at all, or did that
Nope.
just
Not
completely?
Not
blow
at
your
all. Caught
mind.
me super off guard, and I was like, "Oh shit!" Because I knew obviously he was gonna be involved in the season because he's in the marketing,
Hmm.
and like storyline wise, you figure he's gonna play a factor in some way, shape, or form, but you don't know how or when. And so when he shows up, I'm like, "Oh shit! Why did
Yeah.
he send out to get Mark? Like
Hmm.
why does he want to see Mark again?" It's but it also plays into the stuff that you see in the coalition of being like, oh, Viltrumites has never abandoned their post, which
Yes.
he did. He didn't kill Mark, didn't conquer the planet, just left.
Hmm.
So it's gotta be something going on.
Yeah, something's going on. So I want to ask you, Sean, if you can. I know this is kind of a weird thing since we have seen the next episode. But if you
Right.
can, like, again, like, take your mind back, do a Doctor Strange little moment. Like, can you remember what before you watched the next episode, like, what your thoughts were of that reveal? Like, what were you thinking? Like, that means again, pretending that you didn't see. Is that possible?
Yeah, I'll try. I think it was more,
Hmm.
more of like, what does he want with Mark? Or maybe there is some good in him, regardless of him, destroying a whole city and almost killing his son and calling his wife a pet.
Hmm.
Maybe there is some good in him or something. And I was just like very interested to like what the answer to those questions would be.
And I think
Uh,
that's a great question to ask. And so let's focus on that. So
okay,
we both don't get into too much for what's coming. But I
for sure.
think that's a very great question and something that we can talk about is, do you think Omni-Man can be, I don't want to necessarily say redeemed, but in Mark's mind, do you think that there's a way for Nolan and or Omni-Man to make up for what he did in on Earth? Or do you think what he did is too unforgivable? Like, it's you're in this superhero world, it's your dad, right? I think we can all understand that, like with Mark especially,
Yeah.
there's deeper things there, right? And it so my question is, like I said, not that anything he did is excusable or forgivable, but do you think that there is a way for Nolan to be, like I said, thematically kind of redeemed?
I think with Mark, yes, because at the end of the day, it's still his dad.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And even that like last line before he leaves off, and he's like, after you outlive all of your friends and loved ones, what more do you have? And he's like, I'd have you, Dad. So it's like there's still that love for
Such a
him,
great line, dude. Such a good line.
So I think Mark can forgive him.
Hmm.
Is it going to be easy? Fuck no.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But I think it's possible. It's hard when it's your family, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
He brought him into this world, and obviously he looked up to him his whole life. So there's still that inside of him too. So I think he could forgive him. As far as like the world of superheroes forgiving him on Earth, that one's gonna be a little harder.
Yeah, I don't think Earth for sure never is redeemable, but like I said, I guess I again just kind of more thematically, like as a character, like let's just say, like you were just talking about, like has he changed? Like maybe maybe he has some good in him. Do you think that's enough to, like I said, overcome the piece of shit he was? You get what I'm saying?
There's got to be some like actions and some real kind of explanations and new motivation shown for that to happen.
Hmm.
It can't just be a simple conversation. It's a lot more complex than that for sure.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I would be like, dude, fuck you. Like, I don't care. Like, sorry, dad. Like, no way, man. Especially like the
Yeah,
bus, dude. Like, the bus is there's no coming back from that for me. Like, I don't care how good of a person you say you are. Fuck you, man. That's
oh, the
my
train,
remark. Yeah, in the first season when he bashes Mark through that fucking train, dude.
rough.
That's like I said. There's no to me. There's no like that happened to me. Fuck you forever, dude. Like no way. I
Yeah,
don't care if you are
it's
my dad. There's
very
nothing.
understandable too. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, there's nothing that can go. But like you said, it is like obviously we're talking in this like hypothetical superhero world. But Viltrumites. I don't think again, correct me people in the comments if I'm wrong, my other followers of the Book of Mark in the Invincicult. I don't think that there is like a time span on the Viltrumite lifespan. I think it's just like
Seems like no.
yeah, they just fucking live, dude. So unless they get killed. So it is a very interesting thing to think about. Like you just said, it's like what will be left in 10,000 years, 20,000, whatever it is, right? And like they will be left. So that is an interesting theme, I think, to play with, and something that I can definitely, like you said, it rationalizes it a little bit more. But I fuck Omni-Man, dude. I'm team fuck Omni-Man over here.
It's like if you make a comparison to like Marvel, like obviously Loki was kind of redeemed and forgiven, but it
Mhm.
would be like if Loki killed all of the Avengers and
Not
then they
only
forgave him
killed,
after that.
that'd be like if Loki
It did
took
not happen.
that's like if Loki took Coulson and just like basically same thing, just smashed him through an entire train of civilians and then danced on his corpse. That would be like the equivalent, I think, in the Marvel universe.
Yeah,
I don't think
yeah,
there's I wouldn't forgive Loki after that, even if we
yeah.
did have the 2 seasons we just got. I'd be like, dude, I still fuck
It's a
Loki,
lot
man.
more to redeem.
Yeah, a lot more. But that leaves us, I mean, again, it's so hard. I think this one especially, since it leaves on such a cliffhanger, it's
Mm.
so hard to talk about without spoiling things,
Oh yeah,
which
sure.
we would never do here. We never would spoil anything for you guys here. So I think we got to just jump into the kind of last part of the show. I got to ask again, Sean, for you for episode 3, what was your favorite moment from this episode?
I like the Omni-Man surprise, but the Allen stuff was really great too.
Mm.
There's 2 parts we kind of left out that we didn't talk about.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about them.
There's the Guardians of the Globe stuff, which we see a nice conversation between
Yes.
Duplicate and Rex
Mm-hmm.
about just like him being an asshole. But Duplicate brings up this really great point that Immortal is one of the only people who's like died as many times as she has, because so many of her duplicates
Mm-hmm.
die all the time. So that was like a nice touch. And then you see Rudy Robot and Monster Girl go on a little movie date and
Yeah.
try Burger Mart and have a burger for the first time. And it was nice to see him doing like human things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's kind of like a big fish out of the water kind of story, because he's not used to having like an actual usable human body. So it's nice to see the humanization of Robot. You know what I mean? Especially with like his like Iron Man panic attack moment earlier in the
Yeah.
season, and then now this. It's really nice to see that. And then you see Debbie go to the support group.
Mm-hmm.
She calls that number and goes to support group, and then goes to a bar with that guy, but then finds out that he was the partner of one of the Guardians of the Globe. And then she feels so bad that she spills the beans that she was married to Invincible, which sucks that he is such like, understandably he's upset. I get
Yeah.
it and everything like that, but like he kind of blames her for it, for not knowing that he was like a, homicidal maniac, which she was just as fool as anyone else.
Yeah, say how is she supposed to know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
loved
it
I
was
love
hard.
both those scenes though, and I'm so glad that you brought those up, because I think, again, great changes were made from source material to the screen. And with Debbie, again, we've talked about Debbie. We talked about her last episode. I'm loving Deb. I love Debbie. I love Sandra Oh's interpretation of the character that we're getting in
Oh
this
yeah.
show.
Amazing.
And again, this is going to be something, for my other members of the Invincible out there. I don't remember this happening in the book, like her going to the support group and stuff like that. I could be wrong,
Oh,
but I really love the addition of it, whether or not it's in the book or not. I love the
right.
scene because I think it's just another kind of example of her taking charge of her pain and
Right.
the loss that she's feeling over Omni-Man, where again, as like we talked about last episode, in the book she's very much just like destitute without Nolan, and is just
Right.
lost in the bottle. And so in the book, she's actually part of her like kind of coming out of that is she start taking her test to be a realtor, which in the show she's already a realtor. And so I think, again, if I'm mistaken and this isn't the book, please correct me in the comments. But I think they used this kind of support group as in place of that, right? As like, again, showing her
Mm,
taking that step into,
gotcha.
getting over what happened and stuff. But again, just the fact that she took that step herself in the show to go to this support group, I thought was really great. And just again, going back to the whole theme of dealing with the consequences of last season, like like you just said, she meets this other guy, not in a romantic way, but just meets this other guy at the group, and then we find out that his girlfriend was in the Guardians, and Omni-Man killed her, and it's just again, all of our characters are dealing with the actions from the first season, and not even just their actions, like mainly Omni-Man, like dealing with
Yeah,
the decisions
right.
Omni-Man, yeah, mainly him. But yeah, I love the addition of that, and again, I think it just deepens Debbie's character, and again, the translation of her into the show, and I just love it.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Good to see some growth with Debbie.
And I also want to talk too about the scene with Monster Girl and Robot that you mentioned, which is also a really great scene. And you're gonna have to remind me. I haven't watched season 1 in a while. I actually didn't rewatch it before season 2, so maybe this was discussed in the show and I'm not aware. But so in the book, a major thing with Monster Girl is so when she uses her powers, it accelerates her de-aging. So like so
Yeah.
for people who maybe not remember, Monster Girl is not like a 15-year-old girl. She's 30 years old, but
30s. Yeah.
it like using her powers reverts her aging. And so in the book, it's becoming much more rapid. The more she's using it, the more rapid the aging is becoming. So
Yeah.
Robot is trying to help her find a cure for this so that it can stop. Because if she keeps going at the rate she's going, I think in the book it says it's like maybe 5 years or so, even less, maybe she'll be like an infant. Like basically
Right.
she'll die because she reverted so much, far back in age. And so, like I said, a major part of the relationship between Monster Girl and Robot comes from, like I said, he's trying to find her a cure. And that's where, like, they, go to dinner. And she even makes a point, too, which I feel like the show kind of glossed over is again, she's like 30, but the body that the body that Robot's in is like 15. Like, it's
Yeah.
Rex's, so she like makes a point, like, we can hang out, but like that's weird. Like, we have to wait till you grow up a little bit. But yeah, so like I said, that's not in they didn't explain that in the show though, right? Like Monster
They
Girl's powers
have.
and they have, right? But not that
They've
is Robot helping her with that or
No, they
okay.
definitely brought up in season 1 that every time she uses it, she ages down or
Hmm.
younger. But that's like one thing I've been thinking about is that they make such a point of it, but then nothing else really affects it. And you see her change, into monster form
Yeah,
numerous times since then.
numerous.
And it seems like there's been no effect, or at least noticeable effect that we've seen.
Hmm.
So I've been kind of waiting for that to kind of pay off. And like I said, this show is very good at like paying things off and really, so I'm guessing they're going to probably move that and add that to the relationship and kind of enhance it.
Hmm.
I would guess now that you bring that up, that
Yeah.
that would make perfect sense, because I've been thinking that I was like, didn't they make a mention of she gets younger and then she keeps doing it and then there's no mention of it? It's kind of weird.
Hmm.
I think they probably left the thing out because they about the age thing, because they made it such a point where he obviously made it a version of like Rex's body from that age to like relate to her, because we don't
Yeah.
really know how old he is, but he's definitely probably around the same age or something. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, for
Uh,
sure. I
he
don't
just
know if they
lived in a
go into
weird tube
yeah,
his
his
whole.
like tube form, how old his like blob form was,
Yeah,
but yeah, like I
it
said, I
seems like he'd
just
be
that was something I
older.
couldn't
I don't know.
remember if they, like I said, mentioned that in the show. Because
Yeah,
again, the structure of the comic is like a lot different, and like
right,
when we're in the book, he like just got his body right, and like in the show, he's
right.
had the body for a decent amount of time.
A little bit, yeah.
So, but I love, like again, I love the way that they are laying it out in the show. I think it gives what's his name, Robot, like a little bit more depth to his character,
Yeah,
like seeing him in the burger mart and like just like trying a burger was super
yeah,
fun. That didn't happen. And then also too, another change, just kind of giving more props to Monster Girl, I think, and fleshing out her character a little bit more, is she's the one who gets them the tickets at the movie theater to go into the rated R movie. But in the book, that's Robot does that. So like Robot
oh,
goes over to this guy and he's like, I forget exactly how it plays out, but it plays out similarly, but just with Robot. And like he's like, oh, like it's just a matter of weighing out probability, like just showing like how fucking smart he is, right? But I love like how they flipped that and made it Monster Girl instead.
makes
Again,
way
just
more
kind of,
sense.
deepening her character, putting her in the
Yeah,
front a little bit more. So I really, again, very small change, but I think just is another example of how well they are changing and translating all these things just to make things better, right?
for sure. I mean, yeah, it makes more sense that she would. She has
Mhm.
more experience in like the real world and stuff like that. It
And of
makes
being
way
like in a young body, right? Like
right, right,
I
right.
yeah, 100% makes more sense.
And I loved how like confused Robot was because he's such, like a scientific mathematical like like mind,
Mhm.
and him to be like, that doesn't make any sense and blah blah blah. Like it makes way more sense for her to do something like that than him anyway.
Yeah,
So it's
100%.
a nice little change for sure.
Yeah. But so like I said, I love both those scenes and I think that they're great additions into the show and like we just talked about, the translation of it all. But going back to it, Sean, I got to know what's the number one moment for you this episode? I think you said Omni-Man. Is that where you're
Yeah,
sticking with? That's
yeah, oh
number
yeah,
one
yeah,
for you?
definitely the Omni Man
Mhm.
cliffhanger because I just didn't see it coming.
Yeah, I mean, how could it
Alan was a
not
close
be?
second.
Yeah.
Alan was a close second, but that it's hard to top, like I
Mhm.
said, the whole crux of this season is from his actions. So to see him back and be so interested in why he brought Mark to this planet and why he wants to talk to Mark and like what's going on, like and to see more insight into why he left or anything like that. There's so
Mhm.
many questions, you
So
know.
many. And there's so many questions to get to and we have next episode is going to be episode 4 and that's going to be the first half of this season and then we're going to have a whole nother half, a whole nother 4 episodes, so 8 episodes total to hopefully answer all these questions. But I don't think we are going to get to all these questions if I'm going to be
No.
honest with you. There's going to be things
I
left
don't think
open.
so.
But I mean, I'm just so excited to talk about next week. I can't wait to come back and do this
Oh yeah.
with you next week because I'm gonna again, we will never spoil anything for you here ever, ever, ever. But next week's episode is gonna blow you guys away. You guys are gonna love it. It's gonna be the internet will be aflames.
It's a doozy.
Yeah, it is. You heard it here first, folks, from Sean himself. It is, quote, a doozy. So strap yourselves in and get ready. I can't wait to come back and talk about it. But, Sean, before we get out of here, I know we just recapped a little bit of things that we already forgot. But is there anything else that we forgot to mention or something in particular that you wanted to mention about this episode or a point you wanted to maybe a thread you wanted to pick up?
I think that was it. I think we covered this one pretty well.
Sean, as always, thank you so much for doing this with me. This is always such a pleasure. I cannot wait for next week. If you guys all enjoyed this discussion, please give us a like. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure you go over to the Metalcore Nerds channel and you subscribe to them on Spotify, all podcast platforms. And other than that, we're going to just have to see you guys next time. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. I hope you all stay hydrated. Your stacks are all fat and we will see y'all next time.